Yeah. What does pricing do for your business? Everything. It does everything, all right?
Hello and welcome to eCommerce Matters, brought to you by BlackCurve. We help e-commerce businesses make pricing decisions. In today's podcast, we're looking at how much does pricing impact my business? Or another way of thinking about it is, why should I care about this question in the first place? I'm joined by Rob Horton, Product Director here at BlackCurve, who's now no longer in sunny Hampstead. He's escaped to the countryside, so clearly the answers to his questions are going to be more mild-mannered, perhaps, and more relaxed, so time will tell. I'm Philip Huthwaite, the founder of BlackCurve, and without further ado, here we go. Right, there we go. Introduction over. You ready?
Yeah, I guess. I hope my regional twang hasn't come back too rapidly.
It's only been one day, hasn't it?
Yeah, but you cross the border and I don't know, something about it.
Well, I purposely will not comment on it because we'll get into an HR issue if I do. But I'll pick you up on it outside of office hours because that's allowed, surely. So we're tackling the question: how much does pricing impact my business? And I thought we'd start by looking at, from a personal point of view, why are you interested in pricing? Why are you passionate about it, Rob?
Oh, blimey. Well, that's a big question. I came into pricing by accident, I think is the best way of describing it. But I have always been interested in markets. I think for me, so my background is in equilibrium systems. So if you leave stuff alone, what happens to it? For want of a bad way of explaining it, and the whole questions on pricing or how much you sell or how much you charge for something is it one big equilibrium problem, really. So as I stepped out of academia into kind of the working world, it was natural that I'd move to kind of optimization of these kind of things. Because the reason I really like them practically rather than theoretically is that you get the human element. So you don't have a perfect system in the sense that people buy for a whole number of reasons and make decisions for a whole host of reasons, and that makes it a much more interesting challenge because you've got the thermodynamic side or the statistical side, but you've also got the behavioral economic side. Why do people behave like it?
Yeah, I think that's you can tell your background because my answer is probably going to be very different to that. I mean, I think one of the reasons I'm quite interested, and why I'm very interested in it, is because it's constantly evolving, right? And it's almost like I'm so, well, to a certain extent, BlackCurve as a business, if everybody had all their pricing challenges sorted, we'd be out of a job. But really what I'm looking to do is support people with getting that tangible benefit through pricing. And every time we have a conversation with customers, we realize that they can be a hell of a lot more mature with their pricing, and it can really fundamentally support their business to grow because it touches so many areas. But I think there's almost an understanding a lot of the time that it's treated as a bit of a silo. You said it once, you kind of forget about it, and you're done. You move on to the next strategic project. Whereas, what we're trying to do to a certain extent by talking about this podcast on a weekly basis, and as our business grows and we bring on more and more customers, is that it touches so many different areas that it has one hell of an impact.
Well, I think you're bang on there actually, because I think what I've noticed moving to commerce, we call it commerce rather than e-commerce, but because I think it's more general rather than being in the city, pricing and optimization is just it's a different game because you get volume and price shifts rather than changing price to volume, but it's understood to be key, right? In that if you don't have your price data right, for example, you're going to have a horrible time. Someone's going to take advantage of you because that's how competitive it is. The interesting thing moving into commerce was the realization that pricing isn't actually that well understood. And people don't realize that until you sort your pricing out, and your business doesn't line up with the market, and therefore anything else you do in your business is inefficient because your pricing is inefficient, because the pricing is the way you communicate. So it kind of, that is the, or one of the ways they communicate, I should say, but that is the final point. That's the transactional point where I give you this money for this amount of goods. And if that price point is quote unquote wrong, or I should say something a bit more academic, but I'm just going to say wrong. If it's kind of unoptimized, every other decision you make in your business around the market will be affected by that.
Well, I mean, it's a bit like, when you're reporting on any area of your business, and then you suddenly say, "Oh, I've got a gap in this data set." You instantly have, and unless obviously you've got other parts of your data which helps back up your argument, you've instantly undermined your conclusion, because if you've got missing elements to it, you can't know 100% that your decision is correct off the back of it. So therefore, okay, you might have a price on your website, okay, so there's not necessarily a gap in it, but if it's not the right price to maximize that supply and demand transaction, you're not going to be making the right decision in other parts of your business.
So I think I've got a relatively good analogy for it, because this is something I was doing the other day, so I was thinking about
Hopefully it's better than my last attempt at what was it, Ferraris and Fords.
Well, it's close actually, because I genuinely think like pricing is kind of like tire pressure, in that you can get it has to be at a certain level to work, but if it's not optimized, it's actually going to cost you in fuel and maintenance, maneuverability, it'll affect your steering. So it's something that, for someone who's not very car-y like me, wouldn't think, okay, fine, I can get away with being, I don't know, I'm going to say a number and people are going to be shocked that my car maintenance, but like 10 psi less or something, right? So, but in actuality, it's costing me fuel. It's meaning that the car's harder to steer. It's probably eating into how long the lifetime of the components of the car. I think pricing is exactly the same. Like your business will work if you're a bit out of whack, but it won't sing, right? And it won't be at the best place it can be, and it will impact a whole host of things that you don't even realize. So to take that into pricing, if you're mispriced, say you're too expensive, you'll likely have to overspend in PPE to compensate for that, right? So therefore, your net profitability, your total cost on a product will be much higher than it needs to be, because you could drop the price a bit and then you need less PPC, right? Or less, you need to throw it in people's faces more.
You've clearly been buying medical equipment, because the first time you said was PPE. So pay-per-click is what we're referring to.
I've had some masks delivered today. One of our friends' mums is a seamstress, and she's making them. So if you want to link up, hit up the comments below.
Have they got crazy patterns, or are they quite?
No, they're actually just really nice I'll show you outside of it, but they're really nice plain colors, and they're actually really nicely done. They've got like adjustable toggles, so you can adjust the sizing and stuff.
It's fancy. The age-old, I'm having the problem with my glasses steaming up. But that's
There's an article on the BBC. I didn't read it. Don't have glasses, but there is one there.
I watched the video on the BBC actually to work out how do you stop it, and the answer was lift the glasses over the mask, and you're fine. We've massively gone on a tangent. I just wanted to make sure that if somebody was listening and going PPE, what are they talking about? It's pay per click. We're mentioning. You're absolutely right. I mean, I think that analogy is bang on. One of the options is if you've got a tire deflation, you pump them up. Or alternatively, then you've got wearing. Well, what do? You replace the tires, or you make sure that you track the car to make sure that it's not veering. Right. This is to a certain extent what pricing's about. You can still drive that car, but you can drive it a lot more efficiently, better MPGs. It's more of it doesn't sound loud, so it's all of these things that you do. So I like that. I think we're going to have to put that on one of our marketing slogans. It's pricing, like tire pressure. Okay, so I think we've hopefully both established that that we're passionate about pricing, and we believe you've got a lot of you have a lot of tangible benefits through getting pricing right, because I think you're dealing with pounds and pence or dollars and cents or whatever the currency. I won't name them all. How many do I know? Well, I am a geographer, so I should hopefully know a fair few. No, that's flags, not currency, isn't it? I've lost my trail of thought now. What was I talking about? You're looking puzzled. So I think there's a tangible benefit. That's right. There's a tangible benefit to doing pricing. Okay. So if I thought it might be worth exploring that, just to make sure we've got the foundation for today's conversation. Is it why should businesses be interested in changing prices in the first place? What have they got to win? What have they got to lose from doing it? And why is it a tangible benefit from doing it?
Okay, well, let's start with just pricing, right? Let's not start talking about the whole business, but what impact can changing a price have? Fundamentally, it adjusts, in effect, at the product level, it will change how much of a good is bought or sold, right? So if you are mispriced, and that could be too expensive or too cheap, you're in effect not making as much profit per product as you could be, right? So by getting that right, the first thing you can do is maximize the profit per product, right? And then actually there's a slightly deeper layer to that we talked about last week, I think, which is doing it at the portfolio level, or doing that across your product range, because that will account for things like the benefits of bundling or cannibalization, or the lack of benefits of cannibalization, I should say. But really what that core pricing problem is about either whatever your business goal, but usually profitability maximization, right? And that's what pricing can do. Then the side effects that's the pricing function. If we talk about automatic pricing, it can just save you a shitload of time and resources, realistically, because if you're doing a heavily manual task like managing 10,000 products in Excel, going through, updating, sanity checking the prices, it's a serious amount of work for one person. It's a couple of days a week easy. So if you get an automatic tool or automating the pricing function, you get that time saving benefit. So that resource can be focused elsewhere.
Yeah, I think I very much agree with that, and I think without plugging the previous podcast, if you've not listened to it, hopefully all of our listeners are listening to in order, but it's certainly be worth touching upon that. I mean, just to summarise, to build upon what you've just said, Rob. If you look at an individual product level, if you increase the price of a product and you manage to maintain the volume, that's a tangible benefit. There's the delta between those two, and that goes straight to your bottom line. How many other projects across your business can you do that and track that decision back to monetary benefit on your bottom line? Okay, it's very hard to do, whereas pricing gives you that. From a secondary point of view, if you decrease the price of your product and you do it on a product sets that enable you to open up the taps in terms of volume sold, okay, you take that individual margin hit on that individual product, but again, straight to your bottom line. Okay, right, that tangible benefit. The third thing that is often the hidden treasure, if you will, is on your long tail, right? So what I mean by that is a lot of the time we only have so many hours in the day that we can manage our pricing operation, we can manage our business. So if you can free yourself up, and if you can look at your long tail and you can identify what of your long tail is not selling because it's priced incorrectly, you were getting zero from that or hardly any money from those products. Even if you could get 5% of your long tail, 10% of your long tail, you're going from 0 to 100%. Again, you can bag that whole amount of money, okay, straight to your bottom line. I should play bottom line bingo, shouldn't I? With that last rant. But that's the impact that it has on your business, okay, and from a theory point of view, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that. I think I don't really think that's not well understood, in that, like, you often hear phrases like the market sets the price, but it does. But if you don't adjust, you you haven't set your price to the price the market set. So, and I think it is actually quite easy for people to slip into. I want to be careful how I phrase this, but I'm going to be uncareful. I just flag that I'm being careful. Like, you end up in a kind of semi price fixing state. And what I mean by that is that, like, if you're just matching off your competition and not listening to the market, your price function is really can be just frozen in times. So it really isn't helping you by telling you demand for goods at all, or services or whatever. It's just all it's doing is that some arbitrary value that the group of you have kind of decide to sell a product at, if that makes sense. Which is probably close to the correct value. I mean, it's not going to be a million miles away, but also it's lacking the nuance.
Very, very much so. And I think, again, a swear jar for the term pricing maturity here, which is certainly a buzzword which we talk about a lot, is that this impact. I think a lot of people's pricing strategies is mainly centered around their competition, or mainly centered around maintaining parity with competition. So more often than not, it's kind of, how do I just maintain the status quo if that's your pricing decision? Because you're not, generally speaking, if you're maintaining parity with your competitors, unless you challenge that parity, so test that actually on this product set I'm going to be more expensive, on this product set I'm going to be cheaper, on this product set, all you're going to do, by and large, statistically speaking, is sell the same amount of volume. And so therefore you've lost that ability to use pricing to help you get that tangible benefit. It's only when you start to challenge these first base principles of pricing do you then really open up the power.
So I think the maturity question is key, and it's not just around. I think, this is probably a BlackCurve view in general, actually, and certainly one we've formed over the last couple of years. It's not just about pricing maturity; it's about data maturity, right? And it's why I wanted to focus on the question of pure play pricing initially. What can pricing do? Because the pricing function might be heavily siloed, right? And often that function is not a C-suite role, right? The people in that function only have so much ability to make a change within the business. So the question you have to ask, even if you have the aspirations of forging that kind of C-suite role within businesses, how do I snowball this? How do I take just pricing and then prove the benefits of, say, a competitor-led strategy, which is easily understood, and then make that strategy more complex, using a price elasticity or just the market, really. I don't know why we keep calling it price elasticity, but and build that trust within pricing as a function within the business. And then you can start going on to some of what we're going to talk about later, which is how that then touches other decisions. But the reality is that if you haven't got your core pricing function sorted and aligned with the market in a way that represents your business and that you're happy with, if pricing then goes out and touches other parts of your business, it might be misinformed. And it depends what you're doing with it. Obviously, the risk varies, but like, it could be quite detrimental. If you say, for example, had bad data, calculate a quote unquote bad price elasticity value, and then go off to your marketing guys and say, I reckon we can drop this, it's going to go through the roof, let's do a 1-2 punch and pump a load of PPC into this, that calculation is wrong. You've not only got the opportunity cost of lowering the price, which actually often isn't that much, but you've also might have dropped 10-20 grand in on ad spend on a product. So it's really, really important to get your pricing fundamentals nailed, I think.
Well, shall we then move on to looking at the different areas of the business that pricing can impact? Is this a good juncture to do that? Would you like to stay in the marketing realm? Or would you like to move on to somewhere else?
No, start with the marketing, because I think it's the most initially obvious one for me. We've touched on it before, so I think, but if when I think about marketing, there's kind of two elements to it. There's the brand side of it, like how do you represent your business, and then there's the digital side of it, which is kind of how are you pushing products in the market. So we covered this last time, but the brand side of it is obviously, price is heavily tied to brand, right? In terms of are you a luxury? Do you see yourself as premium? Do you see yourself middle? Do you see yourself as affordable? So if we think of like outdoor wear, you've got like Arc'teryx, which is a super high-end brand. Like a backpack will cost you easily a few £100. And then if you get more into the middle-ish range, this is going to be middle for outdoor wear, so it's still quite expensive. You've got, let's say, I don't know, Mountain Equipment or Rab or something like that. And then as you come down into your kind of Carrymores or that kind of thing, and price for each of those is super important, because actually there's almost no point pricing between those bands, right? You either want to sit in kind of like at the affordable end, at the premium end, or at the luxury end, right? Which I think is a better way of dividing it, because if you're in the middle, you confuse people. So say you want to pitch somewhere in between, let's say, I don't know, like a Mountain Equipment fleece and a Arc'teryx fleece, which might have like £150. If you put that point in the middle, people are going to look up and down and say, well, Mountain Equipment's a solid brand, I really like them. Well, they're £75 cheaper, I'll just buy that. Or if you're more, I would say, design focused in your outdoor wear, you like more stylish brand, you're just going to pay £75 to buy the one that probably looks a bit nicer. So you're almost better off competing on price at the high end or competing on price at the lower end, and not messing about in the middle. And that for me is a key reason why brand marketing and price are so heavily interlinked.
Yeah, your pricing strategy, your price setting strategy, your price updating rules need to make sure that they're considering this market segmentation, and and actually, sorry, also product segmentation is probably is just as important. So if you're a business that is selling into multiple markets, you may conceivably be premium in a certain market and not premium in another market. So you've got to make sure your product is offering your prices.
I mean, an example of that is that you sell cheaper products to drive sales of higher, and that has worked almost too well for certain brands. So Burberry did it so well with their accessories that they ended up damaging their brand, because of they actually targeted markets that they weren't really after, right? So I think that what you say there is key, and actually what's really nice is you can do that very simply. And so let's say that you don't have the ability to transfer data around your system, you just get the competitor data, and then that's how you make your pricing decisions. You can do that market segmentation immediately on price and feed that back into your marketing function. You may be, if you're small enough, that might be you as well. So you can immediately take the data you're getting that you think you're just setting prices and use that to make strategic levels about where you want to position products in the marketplace, just by banding your competitors in the market based off that data, which I think is really, really cool, because it's super low touch in terms of it doesn't require it might require you to do a bit of work in an Excel spreadsheet, but it doesn't require a developer, it doesn't require resources, additional overhead, sign off, whatever. And all of a sudden you're empowering someone else within the business. So if you're career minded, you get your data, do your analysis, go over and tap the marketing person on the shoulder, and already you're building that kind of pricing brand within your business.
And I think certainly at the luxury end of the market, this is where you do have the opportunity to really increase prices and not only maintain volume but increase volume, because I think certainly in the luxury market you have the opportunity to increase prices. If we stay on the outdoor wear market, a lot of buyers will say that they're sophisticated in their buying behaviors, that they do all the research, they want to buy the the latest equipment, and they do all the research, comparing all the brands and all the widgets and all of that good stuff. But a lot of the time, if you've got a city type who's going away for a weekend, they've got cash in their pocket, they're going to go on their outdoor website and go, I can afford a 400 quid jacket. That's clearly going to be the best. I'm going to buy that. So therefore, there's no point. So therefore, there's no point for that premium brand to come down in price. If you've invested in the brand to make sure you're a premium market, there is no point. And therefore, you've got to make sure that all of your new product launches, you've got to make sure that all of your accessories, you've got to make sure everything underpins, all of the pricing underpins that approach of premium. I mean, you probably see behind me, I've got a ton of camping gear, right? So I know the outdoor world fairly well. Rab do this really well. That they are phenomenal, great in sleeping bags and coats. Okay, actually, a lot of their other equipment, I might be told off here by the Rab aficionados, is not actually as good. However, because they've established themselves as a premium mid kind of market range, generally, if you're looking at Rab products, they're always quite expensive. Whereas actually, you can probably in certain product lines get a better product at a cheaper price. But there's the whole wrapper for Rab is premium. It's upper premium.
Sure. And you're right, they snowballed that. No pun intended. off down jackets and sleeping down, because their down technology always has been excellent, right? And then you build up the association. Well, if they know how to make a down jacket, surely they know how to make an anorak, right?
I mean, I spent 40 quid on a pair of Rab gloves.
Yeah,
like
or or whatever.
But I mean, they were just like. I mean, okay, they got E-tips on them, but they're not actually massively warm, if I'm honest. But you just...
I would say, and interestingly, if you take it to that, is that Rab is traditionally for dry environments, right? So you've got no idea, like, even if you're in the Arctic or the Antarctic, it's snowing, it's not raining, right? Like, okay, how good's their Gore-Tex? I don't know, like... But yeah, that's a point where you can just use the position and the quality built out elsewhere and then track it across. There'd be no point them doing a 40 quid jacket, because people get confused, because it's like, is this real Rab? I mean, you can knock it down a bit and actually sell. I do think brands like Patagonia and Rab do really well at pricing things like shells and like that kind of stuff, because they price them down a bit. So they seem cheap because you're comparing them to actually their other range, and it's not a like for like comparison, because they're actually still 200% more expensive than a normal shell jacket. But it just seems, oh wow, well, the down jacket's 450 quid and these shells are 150 quid on sale. Wow, that's excellent.
But what they've done is they've worked out what they've actually, in the product development stage, said, right, I want a 100 quid version of this product. I want a 200 quid version of this product, and I made sure that the feature set matches that, so you're not confused. So they're using the product price together, as opposed to simply just discounting to drive volume and so forth. So okay, so I think we've covered brand marketing. What about digital marketing? Does pricing play a component in that?
Well, we started getting into it because it's the extension of what we were saying. So if you're doing... We can do the Rob Horton lecture on digital marketing another day, but if you're doing digital marketing well, it's an incredibly scientific process. It probably should be automated. It's test and learn. It's measure the market. It's respond. It's another optimization process. Basically, you are optimizing, in effect, how you spend the amount of money you have, by and large, to maximize return. Again, and pricing helps that by giving you an accurate view of the market, because if your pricing's out of whack, you're not going to have the correct sales for that. You're not going to have optimal sales for that product. So in effect, your advertising becomes inefficient. So say I am slightly underpriced or significantly underpriced, and I'm just carrying along, spending my advertising money on it. That might sell anyway because you're the cheapest. And people, it's a high demand product. People are just looking for it. You don't need to bang it in people's faces. Conversely, if something's overpriced, you might be having to push harder, spend more money behind it to increase conversion. And actually, a price drop may have had a larger impact. So until you're comfortable that your price is correct, you can't then start tuning your advertising spend, because you don't know whether an increase or a decrease in advertising spend is kind of having the desired effect. Or I'm not saying that you can't do. It's probably worth saying. I'm not saying you can't do digital marketing if you haven't sorted your pricing out. What I'm saying is you're just not going to be optimal at it.
Yeah, you'll be spending money in areas where you don't need to be spending money, and vice versa. You probably should be investing in other areas, that you're not investing in now. I mean, this is why the impact statement, I think, is probably important here. That if you're optimizing your pricing in hand with your marketing, this is where you can be really, really powerful. And we certainly see it when we're looking at Google Shopping data for a lot of our customers that are collecting it from there, and we do that on their behalf. Is that a lot of the time, the first page of the results that you get back from Google Shopping, the first set of products are not necessarily the cheapest. They're because you're bidding for position in Google Shopping. So therefore, if you can manage the seesaw, the pushing the gas on the price versus pushing the gas on the bidding, and you can work out what's the optimal point to get conversion, they are hand in hand. So therefore, you can get, sometimes if you invest in this particular instance in PPC, you can get away, quote unquote, with a higher price. You're extracting more money from that each transaction, and that's where you start to get in a winning.
Yeah, well, I mean, this, I think, not to jump to the end, but this really starts to indicate how you should be viewing product optimization. It shouldn't be pricing in a silo. It shouldn't be marketing in a silo. These are all the different levers you have to maximize revenue out of a product, in effect. Well, revenue or profit, I should say, out of a product. Because there's a whole myriad of things that drive demand. Advertising and marketing being one, price being another, shipping, fulfillment being huge, actually, in certain industries. I mean, we've mentioned it before, I'm a keen fisherman. If someone can solve selling what logistics and fulfillment in the fishing industry, they can have my credit card. Like real talk, because at the minute you buy something, it takes a week, 2 weeks, because of the way the supply chains link up. It's really hard. And because of that, you need to start thinking about this kind of, okay, what are all the factors? How does one affect the other? Okay, if I freeze this one and tune this one, can I make sure that's optimal? And then I do that. The difficult bit is that actually you will then adjust your advertising spend, and that might adjust the price that you need to be at, because they're not quite independent. But yeah, I think a lot of the other things we're going to talk about in this podcast are really just start from the basics of making sure your prices are right, so you can measure the market, or measure the market response effectively when you make a change in the rest of your business.
Because stock levels is another one, right? That we certainly played a huge, pricing and stock levels played a huge impact, especially during in a lockdown situation as supply chains were freezed. It sounds like the fishing industry, coronavirus or no coronavirus, has got its own supply problems. But if we look at stock levels, okay, your price can determine how fast you sell out. So therefore, if you can push the throttle on keeping the price, not discounting, so you can test that over time. You can work out what are the steps of discounts that I need to do to get to sell out, if that's your goal. What are the steps that I can do to make sure that I don't sell out so cheaply and I hold on for that product for a longer period of time?
And if you work in an industry where you don't have sell cycles in quite the same way, your price elasticity tells you how much you need to stock. right? Because it tells you what volume you are going to get through at that price, and you know that, right? And you know what happens if you go up, and you know what happens if you go down. So all of a sudden, your stock prediction becomes a lot more powerful.
So there you go. If you're a buyer, go and talk to your pricing chap in your business and get them to help you with making sure that price elasticity is calculated in your business, because that will help you make decisions.
Because I do think it's worth it is worth a little anecdote on this, in that not selling is always seen as a bad thing, right? Fine. And I don't think a lot of people realize selling too fast is also a really bad thing, especially in general, really, but especially in a cyclical business, because it often means that you're just too cheap, right? And you could be, if you're selling out faster than you can get the stock in, why? I think is there might be a very good reason for it, right? You might have very limited warehouse, and it's competing with other products, but like realistically, you then have a period when you can't offer the product. And so actually, if you can, like you say, you can take your foot off the gas, increase price a bit, reduce the volume, and make more money per product. So yeah, I think especially in the stock management side, the marketing side is really all about just saving money that you've allocated and optimizing that. But this is really about this again is without using your stock combined with your pricing data to really maximize profitability. Again, and like you said, you can really hit the bottom line there, because then by stocking correctly, not just pricing correctly, but by stocking correctly, you can use your stock levels to increase your profit.
It comes back in to help each other. They help each other out.
Yeah, exactly.
And then if we stay with the buyer for a moment, and this is why if you haven't got your pricing decisions, if you haven't got your fundamental price correct, they're making decisions on what to buy next based off an incorrect price point. And it might be that this product, they for some reason decide, you know what, this product is not selling, therefore I'm not even going to bother to stock it next time, or I'm going to reduce my stock allocation for it. But it might actually be that by price testing, you realize that actually I've been in the wrong level, and therefore it opens up the taps, and I should be selling that. And by not selling that particular product, you might have identified that you've lost a whole market for you, because actually there's individuals that only want that product. They don't want the rest of the stuff that you sell. And so it had this knock-on effect in so many different areas. And just to reiterate, they're not going to buy that product again because you've got the price wrong.
I think this is where we start getting into kind of like how important it is to spread the data around the system, right? Because if just from my anecdotal experience, but I know people who work buying and merchandising and that kind of thing, and they do this a lot of the time. They do the same thing that someone in pricing will be doing, but from the other side of it, in that they'll be spot checking people, they'll be spot checking products, they'll be making sure that they're lined up against the competition, usually by hand. And if they're doing that, they're not going to get full coverage, and especially if you're stocking thousands and thousands of products, they have exactly the same problem as you do in pricing, in that they're making under-informed decisions, as you say, in that like they could just be off by 5% across the range because they spot checked a couple they matched on, the rest of them are adrift for whatever reason, and that doesn't mean there's no demand. It just means that demand is purely price driven. And they need to know that. Conversely, they need to know that you're priced correctly, so they can work out if it isn't price driven, which I don't think we've mentioned yet, because that's also key. There's a load of products where either there's no demand, or there's a huge demand and people will just pay whatever they want for it. And using your pricing and flexing your pricing to tell you that is incredibly powerful, because the no demand ones, you say, well, they take up. This is a massive box in my warehouse. It's just sat there. I can't sell it. Some things you have to sell because you sell them once in a blue moon, and it's the gateway into other stuff. But do I discontinue this item? Conversely, okay, why is this product have this demand profile? why is this not driven by price? Maybe I can find other products like this that aren't driven by price.
And then to extend that further, if we're looking at the products which aren't selling, that then drives the decisions around, well, what should be in a promotion. And then you can use price to test how much do I put this in a promotion? Do I do 20%, 50% off everything, or is it just I have to do incremental reductions to shift it? It touches so many areas. So I think we've covered it impacts your position in the market. We've covered it determines your stock buying decisions and how far you manage sell through. We've looked at how it supports buyers with making the right purchasing decisions. We've talked about how it's interlinked with digital marketing, so making sure that you're optimizing your spend in that space. We've spoken about brand marketing in terms of making sure that your brand's not impacted by the price that's set. Was there anything else? I mean, there's tons of stuff. I feel like we could keep going for.
Yeah, I think for the sake of time, it's probably we've covered enough. I just really hope that we've kind of sold you on the fact that really the core reason why I think pricing is so important to get right is it means you can measure the market, and that then impacts basically every decision you make in your business. If you're running if you like me are scientifically minded and want to run your business systematically, it means you can, by getting that right, you can then use that to test and tweak and optimize everywhere else. And until you get that right, doing that elsewhere becomes harder. It's much harder.
Yeah, and I think the most successful businesses that we've worked with are those that put pricing to a certain extent at the core of their business, and then everything else is anchored off that. And then they invest in making sure that the pricing is accurate, that they're optimizing price, and then they know that their stock buying decisions are correct, and they know that their buying decisions are correct. They know that their investment in PPC is correct. It's almost like the spider model as opposed to siloed model.
And I've remembered the one thing actually, data, right? So a really important side effect of pricing is that because the data standards for pricing tend to be a lot higher than other roles or other functions, I should say, within the business, it forces you to have better data, to keep better data, to clean your data up, which will then feed back into the rest of the system, right? So it's a really interesting side effect. It's kind of like getting you to sort your plumbing out, and then everyone benefits, right? Because all of a sudden, like, your cost prices are correct. Something we use a lot that often we find people haven't done it because we need it to guarantee that pricing algorithms don't go off the rails, or just things like making sure that the brands are tagged correctly, products are tagged correctly, prices are set correctly. So a really nice side effect of how pricing immediately affects your business is through that data sanitization.
It forces you to have data hygiene, doesn't it? And it forces that approach. Well, thank you very much, Rob. As insightful as ever. We're going to have to keep you in the countryside. How many weeks are you there for? You're there for 3 weeks, are you? And then you're back in.
Well, for me, it's like, well, I'd like to be here longer, but we'll see.
If it turns into a year, we know he's sold on the countryside. So this has been E-commerce Matters, brought to you by BlackCurve. We help e-commerce businesses make pricing decisions. Today's question has been tackling is, how much does pricing impact my business? And I think it's fair to say it's quite the spider. Tentacles, touches upon lots of different areas. Do not treat it in a silo, because you will get uber tangible benefits and bang for your buck if you make sure that you're fundamentally installing it across your whole entire operation and investing in it. Because if you get your pricing right, it means that all your other decisions in all the other parts of your business will also be more optimal. And again, that will then come back to support you from a financial and efficiency point of view. As I said, we're E-commerce Matters. We're available on all major e-commerce platforms. We probably are. All major podcasting platforms. And we'll see you next week. Take care.